but let's just say there's plenty of content, people won't be complaining. Probably too much, you know what I'm like. Bring in something really cool for players to discover, and one of those is the kind of ball court game. There was even times when I'm like, right, okay, I don't think I can include that. That's that's too grim.
Hello, I'm the Gamebook's guide, and today I have with me Michael J. Ward, the author of the upcoming gamebook, Sunfall. Hello, Michael.
Hi, I'm very excited to be invited on.
Thank you for joining us. Can you give us just a short rundown on what Sunfall is?
Sure. So, Sunfall is my new gamebook series. It's a series of 4 books, open world, influenced by sort of Aztec mythology, with a game system that's kind of sort of adapted from the kind of Dark Souls genre of video games.
And speaking on the Aztec themes, why were those the ones you chose for Sunfall?
Well, originally it was going to be a novel. So I'd planned this as a fantasy novel, and I had a story idea, and I was kind of already researching Aztec culture, mythology. But as I was sort of started to write it as a novel, I just wasn't feeling that excited about it, even though I had a great story, because I don't know what it is with me, but I'm always thinking interactively, and I just kept thinking I want to have some kind of game element to this. I want to have some choice. So it was kind of like frustrating me. And then at the same time as I was having these thoughts, I was playing through Elden Ring. And as I was playing that, I kind of had my sort of light bulb moment of like, oh, I really fancy doing a open world kind of adventure like Elden Ring. And I was thinking, no one's really kind of taken that kind of combat style and gameplay elements and put it into a game book. So that was kind of my light bulb moment of thinking, hang on a minute, I could take my Aztec idea, fuse it with these game elements and create an open world game book. So that's kind of how the Aztec theme kind of came into it all.
Did some of the ideas from the story of the novel transferred into the gamebook?
Probably about maybe 40%. Becoming this open world choose your own adventure, obviously you have to change quite a lot. But yeah, no, I think obviously all the research that I did, kind of, all the notes that I did, was super helpful in me to, craft a really powerful narrative.
You also mentioned that you took inspiration from the Dark Souls video games. How difficult was to try to transfer the combat and gameplay from that video game into a game book format? What were the challenges for that?
The basics of that came together actually quite quickly, largely because in my previous one of my previous game books, Wrath of Ragnarok, I'd already got a boss encounter that kind of used some of Dark Souls mechanics. So I'd already kind of experimented a little bit. Basic mechanics came together quite quickly in terms of having enemies with like a cycle or sequence of moves. When you're fighting them, you actually see the moves and actions of the enemy kind of ahead of time, so that you can adapt and learn to react to their different move set. Building off my Destiny Quest system, I came up with the idea of each weapon having its own combat actions, its own abilities. At the heart of Dark Souls is very much about your weapons, isn't it? And they sort of dictate your play style in a lot of ways. So I kind of wanted to keep that element. And then obviously when I came up with this sort of basic system, myself and Oliver at Archmage, we tested quite a lot of early combats. And it was actually Oliver who came up with the parry system that was introduced, where you actually have a chance to either counter an enemy's attack, or you can evade, which added a whole new level of strategy to each choice in each combat round. So basically together we kind of refined the system into what it is now, which I think is quite a sort of a tense combat system with I feel like there's a lot of tactical choice.
So you talked about that in the Dark Souls video games. the weapons usually dictate your build and your play style. How was that transferred into Sunfall? Because Sunfall, compared to your previous works, have considerably less gear slots. Do you still have a lot of that build variety?
In short, yes. I mean, I haven't done a count, but there are probably approaching like 70 different weapons, probably just over 100 special abilities, spread across not only just weapons, but you have your talismans, you have your armor. So there's like a huge amount of choice in how you choose to equip your hero. But unlike Destiny Quest, in Sunfall there are no classes. So you don't get locked into a certain style of play. You're not choosing to be a warrior or a rogue or a mage. Instead, the weapons, the armor, and the talismans you equip, they don't have any requirements. So if you want to try out different play styles and abilities, you can do. There's no limits on what you can equip. So you could start out playing as somebody that favors big sort of two-handed weapons, but then halfway through the game, you could suddenly decide, well, actually, I just want to try and dual wield daggers, and there's nothing technically that stops you doing that. And as you sort of develop your hero into the later game, then what you're going to be probably likely doing is building your character around some of the status effects that you can apply, like poison, lightning, frost, etc. And so you'll probably be looking at ways of choosing talismans, armor, and weapons that kind of complement each other to really power up your hero. But at the same time, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be a min-maxer. You can just muck around with lots of different things and still have a lot of fun and still smash through monsters.
And you balance all that?
It's actually a lot easier to balance than Destiny Quest.
Interesting.
Because in Destiny Quest, I mean, an individual hero in Destiny Quest can have up to, at some points, 15 different abilities all going on. Sunfall is so much more refined than that. There's less moving parts in Sunfall, which, because I think the combat itself is a little bit more involved in terms of all the choices you're making each combat round. And so I think it would just be too overwhelming to have on top of that loads of abilities. You know what I mean? So you're kind of just focusing mostly on your weapon abilities, and then usually the kind of talisman abilities and armor abilities are kind of supplemental, circumstantial, I should say, to what else is going on. So far, I mean, it's been a lot easier to balance.
Writing an open world gamebook is seriously not an easy feat, right? It's there's a lot of moving parts, and you need to think about everything at the same time. However, you have written 4 books in one go, right? So what were the main challenges of that? That sounds like a seriously difficult thing to achieve, writing an open world gamebook for the first time.
Well, actually, I mean, writing them all at once was actually a huge bonus, I think, particularly for me, because this was the first open world narrative that I've attempted. Because obviously, as you're moving into, say, like book 3 and book 4, if you're introducing things then and then you suddenly think, oh, crikey, I need to go back to book 1 and just add in something, I can do it really easily. Whereas, if book 1 and book 2 had been published already, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So I've benefited from actually working. To me, really, even though it's 4 books, it's just one big story, split across the 4 books. And I think that's helped immensely for me in sort of crafting it and making sure everything is sort of coherent. But I mean, I think the main challenge for me in doing the open world is just being constantly vigilant when it comes to choice. Because with open world, you kind of have to accept that players might go places in a completely, totally different order to what you might assume or have planned. You just, I mean, that can happen. And so I am constantly having to think about, repercussions of, if a character's done this and this, but they haven't even gone there, or there yet, what does that mean for the narrative? You know what I mean? So I think that is been kind of the biggest challenge of just keeping track of all those moving parts across 4 books.
And from the entire world you created, which one is your favorite zone or favorite location?
Gosh, that's quite a difficult one to answer because I mean I've tried with each and every sort of zone and location to give each one its own sort of unique sort of theme and identity. Maybe if I had to choose one, I'd probably choose the Water Temple, which is this. It's like this multi-level dungeon. It's the largest in the book. It's essentially a sunken temple in Lake Texcoco, which is the main lake. You access it across this causeway, and the temple starts above water, and then it sort of reaches down into the depths. And I just think it's got a really nice kind of continuity to it. It's pretty cool and thematic. I mean, it's really hard to pick. And there's also like, a lot of the town and settlements, what I call like the little player hubs where you go and trade and, maybe get side quests and things like that. Each one of those I've tried to really pack as much character into. So each one feels different and unique. So yeah, it's kind of hard to just pick one, but I guess it's the Water Temple dungeon, I guess.
So after playing the prologue, which anyone can download for free on the Kickstarter page, I noticed that there were a lot of player agency, a lot of player decisions, be it gear, be it for combat, be it for the a lot of fail forward systems. So was it like difficult, or how did you come up with so many different types of choices for the players to engage with?
Well, I think with each new book I write, I try and push choice more than anything else. It's the one thing that I'm constantly driving to be better at as an author. The pacing of Sunfall is a lot faster. It's a bit more punchier in terms of its writing, and I think what it aims to do is to kind of constantly throw choice to the reader. I like putting the reader in tricky situations where there is not necessarily any right or wrong answer, but it's kind of what you would do in that circumstance. In the prologue, as an example, there's quite a few sort of different challenge tests which you can succeed or fail at. But I've tried to make sure that that the failure outcomes are just as interesting as the successes, and that there's cool stuff happening all the time, whether you're succeeding at challenge tests, failing them, so it's kind of constantly kind of wanting to throw exciting scenarios and situations at the reader. And I think that is what makes a great game book, in my opinion.
Yeah, it keeps the book engaging from start to end, because the more decisions you do, the more fun you're having, engaging with the experience, because it will be more and more your experience and your story.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think the one thing um, is that it is your path that you're going through these books, but also there's just a huge amount of replayability. So with all these choices, you can easily play Sunfall 2-3 times and be experiencing completely different scenarios and events as you're playing. And I mean, the other day I had to sort of smile at myself because I was writing probably one of the most epic scenes I think I've ever written in my entire uh, history of game book writing. And I was like, wow, this if this was in cinema, this would be amazing. And then I suddenly thought to myself, do you know what? There's probably only going to be about 4% of readers that are ever going to stumble on this massive scene, but it's there and it exists. So I mean, there's loads of things like that, loads of little things to find, and I just think people will be really surprised if they did play through it a second time, for example, to just see how crazy some of the things are that they might have missed.
That's what makes every choice more meaningful.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what, particularly with an open world game book as well. You kind of want to have that feeling of just this vast world that you've got to, you have to explore, but that you're never going to be able to like see everything, on just one playthrough.
Without spoiling too much, can you tell us a little bit about the hero's journey will we know the purpose of our adventure from the start, or we need to figure it out?
As you sort of will discover in the prologue, your hero awakens kind of at the start of book one with no clue who they are, no kind of any sort of memories, and not knowing what their purpose is, which is always a great narrative tool. Admittedly, one that I use in Legion of Shadow, because then the reader starts the series with the same knowledge as the hero, so you're therefore discovering the world kind of together. So in Sunfall, because it is open world, I don't really throw plot at you. Oh, and also because it's built on that kind of Dark Souls style of narrative, where to an extent you're kind of creating your own story. Of course, there are going to be like key plot moments, usually kind of at the climax of each book. And on occasion, you're going to be given nudges and hints on what you could do. In Sunfall, you have complete free will to do what you want and explore the places that you want to go to. Yeah, so I feel like it kind of leads you in kind of gently, and then you kind of pick up the breadcrumbs of plot as you go through, but you're not kind of shoehorned into a very sort of tight kind of storyline. You're kind of creating it yourself.
And will there be any different endings, or is just one ending for everyone?
No, definitely multiple endings. Some significantly better than others. So yeah, so there are a variety of endings, and of course these endings are completely shaped by the choices that you've made along the way.
Do we have a number?
Well, I'm still at this point in time writing the final stages of book four. So, but I know for a fact that well, it's probably about four different endings or variations of endings that I've kind of got going at the minute. It might be more, I don't know.
The themes of this journey, they are pretty dark, right? How dark are we talking about?
Well, yeah, it is pretty dark. Largely because, I mean, yeah, it is a world that is on the brink of collapse. So naturally, it's kind of very desperate times where humanity is clinging on for survival, and of course, that brings out the worst and sometimes the best in people. I definitely think of it as a kind of Aztec, The Walking Dead, in terms of its kind of tone. But I mean, most importantly, Aztec mythology is pretty dark. Uh, and certainly some of their religious practices are, somewhat grim. At least those that are kind of, popularized in accounts and histories. So obviously, so the Aztec theme was a fantastically rich source to draw on. But yeah, no, I mean, it's pretty dark, and there was even times when I'm like, right, okay, I don't think I can include that. That's that's too grim. So I do have a bit of a filter. Um, but yeah, but I think I just think that the dark tone to this book works because you really want to give the world itself a sense of character, and a high stakes, and hopefully that comes across.
How long is that journey? Are we going back and forth between the books?
Um, it's difficult to put a kind of time on like such an open world kind of series. I mean, I reckon that each book could easily be around 15 to 18 hours, maybe if you were kind of focused and sort of kind of speed running a bit. I sort of say that because the Archmage team played through book one, and they did it in 3 game sessions over 3 days, roughly about sort of 6 hours each one. So that's why I'm coming to roughly about 18 hours. But you also have to take into account, because it is open world, you are moving also, you have the option to move between books. And you may have players that frequently return to the town to barter and sell thing and do other things. You know what I mean? So it's really hard to put a kind of sort of time on it. But let's just say there's plenty of content. People won't be complaining. Probably too much. You know what I'm like. and also because of the open world environment, you're going to have situations where maybe you're advancing a zone or a region, but then you've come up against a particular obstacle, or you need just a particular item which you may then discover later in a different book, and then therefore you can travel back and then you can continue to progress the zone. There may be even examples of where it's like you have to backtrack to find a certain switch or complete a puzzle, and then go back to where you were, and then you'll discover that like that door that was previously there has opened, or like a bridge will have fallen to allow you access to a new area. So there's a lot of kind of interactivity and dynamism with the um, different regions, and not only within a book but also across books as well.
Now, speaking about the art, there's going to be a bunch of art pieces, right? It's going to be the first time one of your books is going to have a bunch of art throughout the entire journey. And it's going to be even colored art pieces, right? So what was the thought process on choosing which art and which location will have its own art or event?
So I think we're choosing the illustrations. It's very much kind of, I always go with the rule of cool. So, what are the awesome moments in each book, and which are the best moments that will lend themselves to really good illustrations. So I was kind of obviously aware that the main covers of the books actually feature the kind of main boss monsters to an extent of each book. So I knew that they'd kind of been covered, literally. So therefore, with the internals, I could focus on other monsters and encounters. And I think really most of my choices are showcasing some of the cool monstrosities that you'll be interacting with or fighting. But also, I've tried to pick a few of the kind of cool zones and locations to help give a bit of a flavor of, this vast world.
And how many illustrations can we expect?
So there are 6 color illustrations in each book, but there's also some puzzle illustrations. And then you also have the Tlachtli, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, ball court images as well, because there is a kind of ball court sub-game based on the Aztec game.
So what you're saying is there is a mini game inside Sunfall?
Yeah, so I just really wanted to bring in something really cool for players to discover, and one of those is the kind of ball court game, which is kind of based loosely on the rules of the actual Aztec game that they used to play for festivals and for rituals. And so I've come up with a kind of game system, I suppose, for those. Just something that just introduces something new and breaks up the game a bit. And obviously victory will maybe bag you some cool rewards.
And speaking on art pieces, before you start the prologue, there is a comic book explaining the origin of your character, correct? Was that something you always wanted to do? Was something that you already thought about doing for Sunfall? What was the thought process behind the comic book?
Well, that was basically a bit of a happy accident. So I originally, with Sunfall, I always wanted it to immerse you straight away, not to have any rules at all at the beginning, and just for the story to just kind of drag you in. And originally, the text that I wrote, which is now in the kind of comic part, I'd written, and I was just intending it to be sort of laid out as text, probably with some interesting fonts and some interesting kind of layout, but just for it to be kind of visual as something a bit different. But then I was kind of contacted out of the blue by a comic artist, Daniel De Lopez, who was a massive fan of my books. And he actually was approaching me because he wanted me to write a choose your own adventure comic book, which was kind of super exciting. But at the time, I said, look, I'm writing Sunfall at the moment. But anyway, we got chatting, and he sent me a portfolio of his artwork, and I was kind of looking at it, and I was thinking it was kind of like was kind of a cool, quirky, slightly kind of dark feel to them, and it just gave me the idea of, hang on. So I contacted him and I just said, look, do you fancy turning this prologue that I've written into a graphic novel kind of thing? And yeah, he was like, wow, yes, I'd love to do that. So, I basically just sketched out some ideas and sent them over. He sent me his ideas, and then together we sort of just came up with what you now see at the beginning, which I think is a really cool way of opening, the series.
Do you have any final words for people who are going or want to venture into the world of Sunfall?
This has been a huge kind of passion project for me. If you kind of include all the research that I did, I mean, it's been over sort of 2 years of my life producing these books. And also, I'm very honored to be in the hands of Archimage Press, an amazing publisher who, are passionate about delivering, the best product possible to fans. So yeah, so I mean, I think all I would say is, please feel confident that, if and when you pledge for Sunfall, that you're getting something really special. And also, by the time that the Kickstarter goes live, all 4 books will be done, they'll be finished and ready to be sort of game tested and then printed. So yeah, so the great thing is there'll be no waiting around for future books to be written. The whole series, when the Kickstarter launches, will be done.
Well, and that's everything I have to ask you today, and thank you for joining me.
Yeah, it's been a privilege, and I always love talking about my books, so thank you for giving me this opportunity.
And good luck with your Kickstarter. I'm super excited to play Sunfall. I can tell you that.
Well, I'm sure you'll enjoy it.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.